I struggle every day to be who I need to be. Every day I just get up and start over, try to put God first. As soon as I wake up, the first thing you do. And God has just blessed me so much that I can't focus on the tragedies when there are so many blessings. I just have to be thankful on this side that God brought me through it and that hopefully He can use me to help other people.
Tell you what, everybody I think needs to listen to this podcast whenever they're having a bad day. If they're having their woe is me moment, check into this podcast and just listen to your philosophy. Really, it is a philosophy of how to look at life, from even the simple things that every day you're hitting the reset button. No matter what happens today, tomorrow is a reset.
Right, exactly. Don't dwell on the mistakes you made yesterday. We all fall short, way short of who we're supposed to be. Don't dwell on what you did yesterday, or an hour ago even. It's never too late to fix it.
So powerful. Ready? Ready to rock and roll? Is that action? All right.
Okay. That's right.
All right.
Absolutely. Go. 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 Go.
Hello, everybody. It's Jason Will with
Go. Go. Go.
This is a real estate podcast, but we talk about leadership, personal growth, and becoming the best version of yourself. Leadership, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Growth, best version of yourself.
Go. Go. Go.
So this is a real estate podcast. Tami Lindsey, welcome to the Impact Agent podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story. Your story is going to be very impactful to a lot of people.
I hope so.
And it's very personal.
Yes, it is.
Before we get into how you got to Fairhope and about your story and who you are, what makes you so eager to share your story? How are you so comfortable sharing the details of this with everybody?
I have had a very difficult life, but I'm a very positive person. I feel like God has just really kept His hand on me and brought me through it in such an amazing, incredible way that I feel like I just really need to share that with people and hopefully inspire, even if it's just one person, it will make a huge difference.
That's awesome. All right, so you're not originally from Fairhope, are you?
No, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee.
Memphis, Tennessee. And
yes.
You moved to Fairhope about 3.5 years ago.
Yes, I did.
And what brought you to Fairhope?
My son, one of my sons, I have 6 sons, and one of them moved here for a job at City Hope Church. And we had always come on vacation to the area, to Gulf Shores and Orange Beach. And so we really loved it here, and he wasn't really financially able to live on his own at the time. So I moved here with my 2 youngest sons, and we all lived together for a couple of years, and then he moved out on his own.
Wow, does he still work for City Hope?
Yes, he's a children's pastor.
That's awesome. So just started kind of snooping around on the internet and said, hey, there's a cute little town over here.
Yeah.
About 45 minutes inland, kind of north.
Yeah.
From the beach, and just settled in Fairhope.
Yeah, we found a little house 2 blocks from the bay. And so I was like, wow, this looks really cool. But I really didn't know anything about it at all. But it just ended up being perfect.
And there was something cute you were talking about off air about how it's City Hope Church.
Yeah.
And it's Fairhope, Alabama. So
yeah, one of my friends pointed out, wow, you moved to Fairhope because of City Hope, and it's all about hope.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, that's really cool. I never thought about that.
Well, and that's really going to be, I think, a theme of this podcast is hope.
Yeah.
Because your story is full of tragedy and death, and just it's just been dark.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But you're this super hopeful, positive person. And, a lot of other people may have used similar, or we know they use, if we're just going to be real, let's take our truth pills here. I mean, we know they use, your experience is not unique to Tami.
Right.
So there's a lot of people that use similar circumstances just to bury themselves in a bottle or drugs or just give up on life.
Right.
And that's far from what you're doing.
Right. I don't think you should let your circumstances define you, that you should live up to what God has for your purpose in life and continuously ask Him how He can use the things you've gone through to help other people.
If people haven't picked it up already, they're going to here pretty quick, that your faith is a big part of who you are. It's what, really defines you. But as you're unfolding this story for us, is that something that's always been present, or is that something that you got later in life, you found later?
No, I don't remember a time that God wasn't with me. Honestly, I don't.
So since you were a young girl,
Yes.
you think it's always been with you. And
Yes.
so I think there is a lot of research, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot that can be found and can be read. And there's a lot of merit in the fact that people of faith are able to overcome these incredibly painful circumstances, whereas people who have no faith remain in a lost circumstance or succumb to their circumstances.
Right, because God gives you hope. Like we said, God gives you hope and a purpose and a reason to keep going. If you don't have God, I don't know why, you would even want to wake up in the morning and keep trying.
If we've got time, it may be like, as we're concluding here, it may be good for us to maybe speak to people who have, that part of their life is missing. Maybe they've got a great family and they're fulfilled by their job, but that faith component is missing. And so where do they start? How do they connect? What if you have not been connected to faith since you were a child? How on earth do you do it as an adult? So maybe hopefully we'll have time, or we may have to have you back on to kind of dive into that. But where did tragedy and Tami intersect? At what age did things start to kind of go bad?
Well, my mom left when I was 4, and my dad tried to raise my sister and myself, and I really do think he tried, but he really struggled. He struggled with mental illness and anger issues. He was always having women in and out of our lives, and it just was pretty crazy. But to the point where when I was 15, I met my husband. He was 5 years older than me, and got married when I was 16, had a baby when I was barely 17, and mainly just to get out of the house.
Just to get out of the house.
Yeah.
It was your way to escape.
Yeah.
Just that, the dysfunction of that environment.
Yes.
Yeah, so you saw women coming and going. You never were exposed to a stable home life. There was never was there a constant female figure in your life at all?
Well, my grandmother was, yes, my mother's mother, even though my mother was not at all a good role model, but her mother was, and she's still alive. And I just spent Thanksgiving with her. So I was very blessed to have her. She has always been there for me, but I didn't live with her, It was not constant.
So is your mom still around somewhere in the picture?
No, she literally drank herself to death. She died of liver disease a couple of years ago.
Oh, wow. And so you never reconnected with her?
I did, but it was never a real mother-daughter relationship. She just didn't really have a maternal instinct, or she just was one of those people that you wonder why she even had kids, and totally different from my grandmother, the total opposite. So I bet
that was hard on her as well.
Yeah, it was. My grandmother had a lot of guilt because my mother left, and so she felt like she had to compensate,
Do you think maybe your mom had some mental
issues,
mental health issues?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So both of my parents did.
So when you get married and start to become a mom yourself, how are things? Are we going through like a drama-free phase here, or are things still hard?
Well, of course they were hard because I was a teenager and all my friends were graduating from high school, going to the prom and everything, and I'm at home with a baby. So it was a struggle. It was difficult, and I'd never, I was just thrust into it. So it was just, I'm a mom and a wife all of a sudden, and I just did the best I could.
Well, was there love in this relationship? Was it?
There was love, but I was never in love. It was more like grow to love him, friendship type thing. But he had his own issues as well. And, I did go on to have 5 more boys, as I said earlier. We were married for 26 years. But he had mental issues and he had severe depression. And the older he got, the worse it got. And the more stress he was under. We had a landscape business. It grew pretty big. And the more stress he was under, he just couldn't handle it. And he pretty much, I guess, had a breakdown. And he just kept getting worse and worse. And somewhere around that time, my father, who was always struggling with his anger issues, shot and killed my cousin, his nephew. And so I'm dealing with my father in jail, and I'm the person who has to meet with the investigators and meet with the attorneys and deal with him always wanting something every day, calling me from jail. And then my husband's falling apart, and I'm trying to raise these little boys, and I'm trying to be the perfect Christian homeschool mom and pretend like none of this is going on.
Oh my God.
I don't know. Yeah, but it's when you go through things like that your entire life, it's just like you just deal with it. You know what I'm saying? It's just like your life has always been one thing after another. So it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal at the time. You just deal with what comes. And then when you look back several years later, you're like, wow, how did I do that? Or, how did I make it through that?
Yeah. So just to kind of infuse the faith back into this conversation to where maybe some of our listeners are having some questions in their own mind about how your faith is being tested all the way. But I think a lot of people are like, well, wait a minute. If Tami is this Christian woman who is always trying to do good and loves God and does all these things, why is all this stuff happening to her? And I know just from my understanding of the way this goes, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because you're obviously way more of an authority than I am, but it's not supposed to be all rose petals and sunny and 70.
No. I believe that if you're not going through hardships and trials, then you should be worried as a Christian, because that is how God molds and shapes you into who he wants you to be more like him, and for him to be able to use you. People are not necessarily going to listen to someone, tell them how to live their lives or tell them what to do if they've never been through anything. If they've had an easy life and never suffered a hardship, then people want to listen to you if you've been through it. You can really relate to them. It just helps a lot if you've been through it. So I'm thankful. I'm really thankful that I've been through what I've been through. It's been so hard, and I wouldn't want to go through some of it again. But I'm thankful on this side that God brought me through it, and that hopefully he can use me to help other people.
And for the record, you've never even have you had a temporary breakup with God? Like saying, listen, we're on a break. It's not me, it's you. Your faith hasn't been tested to the point where you're like, okay, God, I'm going to need a little break from this because you have abandoned me in this moment.
Yeah. Well, I've never, ever, ever felt like God has abandoned me. I've always felt like I didn't deserve to I feel like we don't even deserve to be here. And just being alive is amazing. So anything that we get above that is a plus and a blessing. And I don't think that any of this is from me. None of this is because of me or from me.
Right.
It's God. It's God in me and speaking through me, because there's no way I could have made it through all the things I have. I look at other girls who grew up with me in similar circumstances, like you were saying earlier. They're on drugs. They've been sleeping around with whoever, and it's just so heartbreaking. And I look at that and I'm just so thankful that I'm not like that. But, we're getting a little bit ahead, of what happened, because I did want to say that my father did eventually overdose while he was waiting murder trial for my cousin.
Why did this happen, this altercation between those two?
I really don't know. My cousin was crazy.
So maybe they were just drunk one night and got in a fight?
Yeah, I don't really know. The attorneys told me not to ask him specifically what happened, because then I could be a witness. So it never went to trial, so I don't know exactly what happened. But My father did overdose. We're not sure if it was intentional or accidental, but he did die from an overdose. And then, I don't know, maybe 5 or so years later, my husband just kept getting worse and worse. And, you know, I'm a Christian, so I thought as long as he's getting help, you know, I have to stay with him in sickness or in health, for better or for worse, you know. And he was going to a psychiatrist, taking medication, but it just got to the point where he wasn't really getting help. He would take pills, but he wouldn't really get help to fix what was happening. It was like putting your finger in a dam.
Right.
And eventually it just exploded, and he became more and more emotionally, verbally abusive. And I finally just came to the point that I had to leave. And 2 weeks later, he hung himself in our attic. And my 18-year-old son, like I said, we had a landscape business, came home from work and asked his brother, "Where's Dad?" He said he's upstairs. And as soon as he told him that, he knew, because we were always on the lookout. That's how we had spent years. If he went off somewhere, we're finding him to make sure he didn't do something. And this time he did. And they had to cut him down and try to revive him. And it was too late. And it was horrible, devastating, especially for them. One thing, though, is that I was never upset with him, because I know without a doubt that he would never, if he was in his right mind, do that where his kids would find him. Mm-hmm. He did love them, and he would never do that. So that just shows to me how sick he was. You know, he was sick. Mental illness is maybe sometimes even worse than physical illness.
Right.
But it is an illness.
And it was your 18-year-old son. And what was the age of your other son?
13.
13.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Have there been do you recognize any traumatic effects from this event on them now?
Yeah, especially my 18-year-old. He had a really tough time with it. He struggled, and he still struggles. But my 13-year-old, he seemed like he's the kind of kid that I think he's like me in some ways. He just kind of seems like he handles everything, but I also think he keeps a lot inside.
Right.
But he does handle things better than most people. So, you know, I even took him to therapy afterwards, and the counselor's like, he's fine. You know, he said some people just handle things better than others, and he seems fine. Yeah.
20 years from now,
right,
he may have just a complete breakdown.
And right now, he could be holding a lot inside. You know, You just don't know what people are really feeling inside.
So this is a lot, but we're just really getting started here.
Yeah.
All right. So what happens next?
Well, okay. So 5 years after he passed away, and that's why I was saying we were kind of getting ahead of ourselves, because a few years after he passed away, I have had times where I never questioned God or felt angry with God or anything like that, but I wasn't living like I should have, you know, just not. For 26 years, I tried to be this perfect wife, mother, Christian woman, and I just think I kind of was just like, I don't know what to do anymore, you know. It was like my purpose I felt like kind of taken away, because I'd always, I guess I maybe even idolized this whole family, you know, perfect family situation, I guess, because I didn't have it. And
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I tried to control everything because my life was always out of control when I was growing up. So I tried to insert a lot of control. So after he passed away, I was just kind of like, I don't know what to do anymore. And it's taken me a while to get back to where I'm supposed to be. And 5 years from the exact anniversary of his death, my 9-year-old, my youngest son, was diagnosed with leukemia. He had been sick, having, you know, gastro problems for like 9 months. I'd taken him to the pediatrician a couple of times, but, you know, they're like, take him off gluten and dairy and give him gas drops. And so one day he got into the car and he was eating ice. And I'm like, why are you eating ice? And he said, I just like to eat ice. And I'm like, no, that's a sign of anemia. So the next morning, I called the pediatrician's office, and they said that they couldn't fit him in, but he needed to be seen right away. So I took him to the Children's Hospital emergency room in Memphis, and by that night, we were at St. Jude with a leukemia diagnosis.
Wow.
And
how old was he at this point?
9.
9 years old.
So they started treatment right away. I mean, we didn't even get to go home or anything.
Chemo?
Yeah, chemo. Yeah, a weekly. They put a port in his chest. He had to have weekly IV chemo through his port, and he had to take oral chemo daily. And I was still okay. They said, it's the most curable form of leukemia. He's at the perfect age, if there can be a perfect age. He wasn't too young, and he wasn't a teenager. It's really hard for young kids and teenagers, but his age was like, if there's the best age to have it, that was it. So I'm like, okay, 2.5 years. We have to do treatment for 2.5 years, which is a really long time. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, okay, we got this. We can do it. We can get through it. It'll be fun. So I think 8 or 9 months after he started treatment, we moved to Fairhope. But we still went back and forth to St. Jude for procedures, maybe once a month or every few months, I think. And so a little after 2 years of treatment, we go to St. Jude. It was our next to last appointment. And so we're talking about taking his port, when they're going to take his port out, and how everything's going to go to end treatment. And so when I left the hospital that day, I was driving home, and the oncologist called me and told me that I should pull over on the side of the road because he had to talk to me. They had done a spinal tap, and they had done a bone marrow test to check for, which they always did periodically. And they found that he had relapsed in his spinal fluid. So they wanted him to restart treatment all over again. This time it would probably last about another year. And we did, and it was even stronger chemo, and he was really sick, really, really, really sick, to the point that I just thought it was going to kill him. I mean, he was just lost so much weight and, just sick all the time. So I'm the kind of person who researches everything. Like, I just probably drove myself crazy researching. And I did find out that there was a new treatment called CAR T cell therapy, where they go in and extract the T cells from the blood. They re-engineer the T cells, and then they re-infuse them, and the T cells go in and attack the leukemia cells. It's amazing, and it's really just curing so many people, and we were so excited. So we went to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and had the apheresis done. That's when they extract the T cells. And then you have to wait like 4 to 6 weeks for them to grow the cells and do what they need to do to them. And then he went back, and we stayed in Philadelphia for 6 weeks. They give him heavy chemo to basically wipe out his system. And then they reinfuse the T cells. And then you have to wait 4 weeks and then have more bone marrow tests to see if it actually worked. So we're so excited, this is the answer. We're planning lives like this is the end of his treatment. We go in after the 6 weeks are over, and he has the preliminary test. Everything's great. Again, we're talking about port removal and what to do down the road and follow-up treatment, whatever. We go in the next day, and they say, we're sorry, but it didn't work. He has B cells. The T cells were supposed to kill all the B cells in his body because he had B cell leukemia. But the B cells were already back, and that's a bad thing. Mm-hmm. So, we were just devastated. And we just drove back from Philadelphia to Alabama like the next day. And he relapsed again, and I found another clinical trial in Seattle at Seattle Children's Hospital. It was another T-cell trial, but it was different. The one in Philadelphia was derived from mouse DNA. This one was derived from human DNA. And they had changed it to try to make it last longer in kids who were resistant. So we did the whole thing over again, went for the T-cell extraction. They went back in May to Seattle to stay for the 6 weeks. And he had the infusion on Saturday. And he was doing so great all week, which is not necessarily good. You want them to have some kind of reaction so you know that it's actually working.
Right.
And so I'm like, Gunnar, you're starting to worry me because you're doing so great. I mean, we would go get cheeseburgers and go to Target. I mean, he was feeling great. We just, we were having a great week. And so I think it was a Wednesday night, that following Wednesday night, he woke up, Thursday morning at like 1 in the morning, just throwing up sick, just really sick. And I'm like, okay, it's happening. This is great. That means it's working, right? So he kept being sick, and he finally became non-responsive to me. I mean, he would look at me, but he couldn't really communicate with me. And we were there by ourselves. So I had to get him. We were staying in an Airbnb house, from the house into the car, and he couldn't even walk. I just had to kind of like put my arms under his and just he could just scoot, and I just kind of dragged him to the car. And they said that to call if you were going to bring him in if they had any side effects. So I did, and they didn't act like it was any big deal, just bring him in. What time are you going to be here? And so we get there, and I'm still like, okay, everything's fine. They're going to because they had told us, that all this was a possibility and what drugs they would give. He was having neurological symptoms. He was having seizures on the way to the hospital. I didn't realize it because it wasn't like, you hear about seizures, swallowing the tongue and all that. It wasn't like that. But when we got to the hospital, he had, like foam coming out of his mouth, and it was all I could do to get him in the hospital. But I'm still just thinking, okay, I'm just sitting over to the side, letting them do what they have to do. And a doctor comes in, and she's like, this is very serious. This is life-threatening. His brain is swelling, and they kept having to do CAT scans to see if the medication was working. They put IVs, tubes, in every part of his body that you can imagine. They were just trying to pump so many anti-inflammatories and just everything into his body to try to bring down the swelling of his brain. But it swelled so fast that it crushed his brain stem. And they said, they said that they wanted to take me into a room and talk to me. And they were like, do you have anybody you can call? And I'm like, no, I'm okay. So they take me in this room. I think it was 6 doctors, me by myself. And they're all just staring at me, explaining to me that he's not going to make it, And it was just so unexpected. And they were just sitting there staring at me. And I'm just sitting there like wanting to break down, but I felt like I couldn't because all these people are staring at me. And I was thinking, why are you doing this? Mm-hmm. This is not a good way to do this to a single mom, So then they said, well, do you, he's not going to make it. Explained why. And do you want us to take out as many of the tubes and things as we can so you can just lay there and hold them? And I was like, yes, of course. So, I had to, at this point, my other kids were on the way because we had told them that was life-threatening, so they were flying up. But it's across the country, right, from southern Alabama to Seattle. So I had to wait. I don't know. They got there sometime during the night, and I just laid there and held him for hours until they got there. And then when they arrived, they didn't go through what I went through. The last time they saw him, he was fine. And they just talked to him the night before on the phone, and he was great, joking around, laughing. And so in their minds, they're just like, no, he's going to be okay. They're like researching, trying to find ways to save him. Mom, we just need to keep him on life support indefinitely. We can fix this. There's got to be somebody can fix it. And I'm just like, guys, he's gone. I mean, he was gone. I felt when he was gone. his body was cold, and I just knew his spirit was gone long before
They got there.
Yeah. And so it took them a while to come to acceptance, at least 24 hours or so before they could finally accept it. And I said, he would not want to be like this. He would not like this at all. So I did talk them into just taking off stopping the blood pressure medication. We didn't turn off the life support. We just stopped the blood pressure medication, and it only took maybe less than an hour for him to go. But it was the most beautiful thing ever, Jason. My kids are so amazing, and my daughter-in-law, we just stood around his bed and we prayed, and we found this music playlist on YouTube, and we played music for him, and it was horrible. It was the most horrible thing you could go through, but it was also the most beautiful thing at the same time, because you just saw all the love that they had for him. And it's just, I don't know how we got through it, but we did. We haven't. We still are. This was only 6 months ago.
Right. Yeah, that's a good thing for everybody to hear, that this is very recent.
Yes. We're still struggling. I mean, we take turns having our moments that we break down. But for the most part, we are doing exceptionally well, considering, because, you always think as a parent, that is the worst thing that could ever happen to me, losing a child. I thought I would never be able to get through something like that. And at his funeral, we had a graveside service, then we had a celebration of life, because I don't like, funerals. I don't like having a body in a casket. I didn't want people to remember him like that.
Right.
I wanted them to remember him happy and alive, and I wanted to celebrate his life, because I don't like saying that he died, because I don't feel like he died. He went to heaven. And as a Christian parent, that's your ultimate goal. I was just talking to my sister about that yesterday. That is your goal, to get your kids to heaven. And he's there. And I made it with him. So I have to focus on that. And I also focus on the time that we had with him, not the time I could sit around and dwell on, I'm going to miss him getting married, or him having kids, or graduating from high school, learning to drive. But I don't do that. I focus on the time I had with him, and the fact that we had 4 years where we knew he could die, So we treasured all those moments. We took so many pictures. We did so much together as a family. We have tons of videos. And I told my kids, he could have died in a car wreck instantaneously, and we wouldn't have had any of that. But God gave us 4 years to prepare. Even though we never really thought it was going to happen, we really didn't. We always knew on some level that it could.
So you've got all these other children to take care of, or that are counting on you. They need mom time. They need their mom to help them do little things like schoolwork and all these things. Are you working during this time period? How are finances? What's going on? Because I know medical bills are like crazy expensive. What was the insurance situation? Like, what was going on just from a practical side outside of this? How were you able to have 4 years of being basically devoting much of your motherly time and resources to one child?
Right.
How did all that go about?
Well, thankfully, most of them were grown. My now 17-year-old, he was 12, I guess, at the time of the diagnosis. So it's been so hard for him. He's just not gotten the attention that he needed. I mean, just with it, that's the way it is with siblings of kids with cancer. It's sad, but that's just the truth, especially with a single mom. Mm-hmm. His brothers have done some, but they have their lives, and they had to, live, work. And my now 23-year-old, the one who was 13 when he found his dad.
Right.
He was the only older one who was still at home when his dad died. So he became like their father. He is the most amazing young man ever. He took care of his brothers. He took care of the house. I did go back to work at the YMCA, and that's how I became a personal trainer. And he would take care of his little brothers. We had 2 acres. He would take care of the yard. He did everything. And when we moved to Alabama, he didn't move with us. But maybe 6 months later, he said he came down to visit. He said, "Mom, I'm going to move down and live with you until Gunner's done with treatment and help you." And I'm like, what 20-year-old kid does that? You know, he would take off work on Wednesdays. We had to go to Pensacola every week for his infusions. He would go with us every week. And he has been like their father. And it has been incredibly hard on him losing Gunner, because a 23-year-old shouldn't be the father of a 13-year-old in the first place. And then to have to, he's already been through what he went through with his dad, and then he lost Gunner, and it's just been, I just don't know how he's functioning at all. But it's been really hard. But as far as the insurance and finances go, God has always taken care of us. We were on Social Security survivor benefits because of my husband died. So we had that. And at St. Jude, they take your insurance, but anything that the insurance doesn't cover, you don't have to pay for anything. So we didn't have to do any of that. I never had to worry about insurance, really. Maybe some co-pays and things like that here and there, but it was never anything major. And I did try to work, but, you know, when he would relapse, I would have to stop. And then sometimes he would get better and I would try to start back, and then I'd have to stop again. So I've had to start and stop. It's
like being a real estate agent. I mean, you've got to, if you don't show up, you know, you don't get paid.
Right.
So,
yeah. And when you're a personal trainer, you need to be consistent with your clients, and it's a long-term relationship. It's not like something you do once and you don't do it again with that person.
Right.
It's a long-term relationship. So when Gunner did pass away, I only had one client, or 2 clients, I think. And so I've had to completely rebuild since then. And after he went to heaven, I started driving around looking for a place to train people in Fairhope. And the first place I called, the first sign I saw, I talked to this guy named Walt Bolton. And who's a friend of yours.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, I have some warehouse space, and I actually have equipment in the space that you can use as well. I had it for my employees, and, you know, they kind of never used it, so it got pushed to the side." It is the most perfect situation. It's just like he had this commercial equipment that wasn't being used, and I was able to just walk in, start building my clientele back up and training people. It's God. There's no way it could not have been God, because it couldn't be any more perfect. The first place I saw, first place I called.
So how did you get Walt's number?
Off the sign out in front of his building.
But like the for sale sign? Or
for rent sign.
For rent sign, okay.
Yeah.
So you call up Walt, you start talking to him, and he's like, you know, what do you want the space for? And then you just start getting into it, and he's like, well, I got the equipment. And that's incredible.
I know. It was so incredible. And that's what God does. He does things like that in my life. Yeah, there's been horrible tragedies that are just beyond belief, but he also does amazing, wonderful things. 6 weeks after Gunner went to heaven, my first granddaughter was born. My only granddaughter.
Right.
I finally got a girl, and she's so perfect and precious. And the timing, you know, was just amazing, because he gave us this beautiful, precious gift, and we all love her so much. And I might also say that all my kids are down here now.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Where is everybody?
They all, the other one, my son and daughter-in-law moved down last April because they wanted to be near Gunner too. You know, after he started relapsing, we're, you know, just like, we need to spend time with him. We need to be together. So they moved down. He started a landscape business, and their landscape business has been doing great. 3 of my sons work in that. And then my oldest son just moved down after all of this happened in July of this year. So they're all here, and it's just amazing. They're amazing kids, and I couldn't do it without them. And God has just blessed me. He's blessed me so much that I can't focus on the tragedies when there are so many blessings. I just have to be thankful and look at the positive. And I mean, that's my nature. I just look for the positive in everything. And it's not because of me. It's because of God. I mean, He made me this way. I don't think I chose to be this way. I think He just made me this way.
Well, I think you definitely do have a choice. I mean, you could wake up every day.
Yeah.
You could choose to focus on all these tragic memories, but you just said, I choose to focus on the positive. So if you have a choice, everybody has that same choice.
That's true, yes.
So I think, it's important for people to understand that in these circumstances, they don't define us. It's just something that happened.
Exactly. Right.
So at the end of the day, you're still left with that choice. You can always find something positive. And I think those people that, you left behind in Memphis who had the similar, life history and circumstances and all those things that are on the drugs and have these dysfunctional relationships, they chose a different path. They chose a different focus, right?
Yes.
But it's never too late.
No, it's never too late.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that this has brought me to is completely surrendering to God. That's a major thing. And it's kind of hard to do, honestly.
Yeah, what does that mean? To
completely say, God, I'm yours. Use me however you need to. Do what you have to do in me, with me, through me to, help other people or whatever it is, however God wants to use you. That is a really hard thing to just give that. Not that we really have that choice. I mean, it's ultimately God's choice. He could do anything. But I'm saying for us to completely make that choice, it's scary because you don't want your kid to die. You don't want your husband to commit suicide. You don't want bad things to happen. So you feel like if I just hold that back a little bit, it won't happen. But after you've been through everything I've been through, I'm at the point where I'm just like, God, I surrender.
I think what's interesting to me as I listen to you talk, it has to have been this really empowering experience for these boys to see a mom who was unbreakable.
I hope so.
You went through this period where you were a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
You had to find your way again, but it's just like, you were probably just a little bit dizzy because of, there is trauma and you are human at the end of the day. So you are susceptible to your circentaces. You're not impervious to emotion.
Right. And I don't want people to think that I just know, because I still struggle. I still struggle every day. I have my times where I completely break down and I'm just like, the next day I just have to start all over again. It's not easy. I don't want people to think that, it's just.
Yeah, you're not walking on clouds.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. I struggle every day to be who I need to be. And every day I just get up and start over, try to put God first. As soon as I wake up, the first thing you do, and pray all the time. I mean, the Bible says to pray without ceasing, and I think a lot of people don't understand that, but that is something that I'm constantly doing, is just talking to God, just talking to Him. You don't have to have some kind of formal memorized prayer,
right.
And you don't have to get down and have an altar. Just talk to Him throughout the day like you would anyone else. And that's what I do. And it's hard though, Jason. It really is hard.
I don't want to speak for your kids, but I just can imagine that they can say, well, listen, I mean, we talk about that, like the overlying theme of this podcast is hope. And so if we've got this mom who has faced all this adversity and none of it has broken her, we're not ever through. There will be more tragedies. There will be other things. There will be other adversity. There will be other mountains to climb. But we know we're going to climb them.
I hope so. I hope they feel that way. I really do, because they have been through so much at such young ages. It's just, as a mom, it's heartbreaking that they've had to suffer through what they have. I mean, just what happened to their dad alone is beyond belief.
A lot.
Yeah. But then to have to go through that with Gunnar too, I mean, you know that they have to question God and maybe even get angry with him, maybe. You know, I don't know. Everyone's different. And especially when you're that young, you don't have the life experience to deal with it as much, you know?
Yeah, to put it all into perspective. So how are you using these life experiences now from a relationship standpoint, both in life and business? Are you somebody that, do you minister to people? Are you somebody that you encourage people to come talk to you? Do you find that this experience kind of bleeds through to your professional life at all with your clients?
Yes, I want to help people. I mean, I don't want to go to work in a job. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I know there's a lot of people who have to go work in a warehouse or whatever, but if I can, I want to help people. I want to make a difference in every aspect of my life, my business and outside of my business. But with my business, it's so incredible to be able to help people change their lives. I mean, my son, my 28-year-old, came to the gym to talk to Walt a couple of weeks ago, and I was working with one of my clients, and she said, "Your mom has changed my life." And I was just like, wow, that is just so cool. You know, it's so amazing for someone to tell you that you changed their life. And it's just because they feel better about themselves and they feel stronger. And I build relationships with my clients. That's a huge part of being successful with personal training, is building personal relationships, because the people have to want to keep coming back and doing something they don't necessarily want to do.
Right.
Because exercise is not always the most fun for everybody.
No.
So they have to want to come because of you, because they like being around you and you make it enjoyable for them. So, yeah, it's incredible that I'm able to do that.
That's really awesome. So how do people get in touch with you if they want to come check out the gym and maybe do a session with you? I mean, do you have a website, cell phone number? How do you want people to get in touch with you?
I do. Any of those ways. My business is called Tami Lindsey Fitness, and my name is spelled Tami.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it took me a while to find you on Facebook.
And then Lindsey is Lindsey. Some people want to put an A in there. So I have a Facebook page. I have a website, TamiLindseyFitness.com. I have a phone number. It's on both of those.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So TamiLindseyFitness.com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Real quick, just what is your style of personal training? Would you call it like circuit training, or?
I would call it functional training. We do circuits, but it's functional training. So we do weight training, and it is to build strength so that you can function in your life. We do full body workouts. We don't do, shoulders. We're not power lifters. We're not doing body parts, split body parts. I do a full body workout, and I work with the person where they are. I'm not Jillian Michaels. I'm not going to bring someone in and make them do something crazy that's going to make them pass out. I start where the person is and build from there. I ask them what their goals are and work with them in that way, because everybody's different. Everybody has different goals. Some people want to lose weight. Some people want to just gain strength. One of my clients right now is 69 years old, I believe, and he just swam in the Keys 4 miles out to a lighthouse and 4 miles back in a race. I mean, he's incredible. His wife's incredible. What? Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
They're 69 years old.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Senior citizens are not what they used to be. It's amazing. It's awesome.
Well, all right. So this is all one-on-one, correct?
Yeah. Well, not necessarily.
Or do you do some group stuff or what?
Yeah, I can do groups, small groups, 2 people, 3 people, whatever. I'm flexible in that way.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to try to get some pics from you of the gym and the space so we can put that out there as well and show everybody kind of where you're at and what kind of equipment you're working with, and give everybody a visual of Tami Lindsey Fitness in action.
Okay.
What if somebody's listening to this, though, and they've got a son who's going through, or a child, daughter, son, going through similar cancer diagnosis, treatment? What if somebody just needs, maybe it could be addiction? Can they reach out to you?
Of course. Please. Yes. Anyone who wants to talk to me can reach out to me. I really have a heart for parents that are going through cancer treatment with their children, especially single moms, because it's really difficult as a single mom to go through that. I mean, I've had friends that their husbands left them while their child was going through treatment, and it's just, I can't even imagine what kind of person would do that to begin with. But, I have a heart for anyone who's going through anything that I could possibly help with.
Yeah, I was thinking back as you were talking about before they took you into that room, one of the doctors or the staff was like, "Is there somebody we can call?"
Yeah.
And you're like, "No.
Yeah.
There's nobody to call.
Right.
This is it."
And everyone my kids were on the airplane, they were literally on the airplane, so I couldn't call them. And yeah, it's just, sometimes you just you don't have someone there with you. And Gunnar and I just got used to being alone most of the time, and we're best buds. So I do miss him. Right.
But just to reiterate this to the audience, you spiritually were not alone.
Never was I alone spiritually.
And I think that's an interesting point for people to hear who aren't spiritual, just how much of a void it can fill if you connect to that source.
Definitely, because God can bring you through. I've told you today, God can bring you through anything. I believe that. But you have to trust Him. You have to have faith. That's the key. You have to have faith. You have to believe that He knows what's best. No matter how bad it gets, you have to believe that God knows the big picture. We can't see that. We only see our little view, but He has a plan and a purpose, and we have to believe that and trust Him.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, but if I'm listening to this and I think this is a bunch of mumbo jumbo, like I'm listening to this and I'm like, good for Tami. I'm glad this helped her through all this situation, and she's better for it. It's just not for me. What would you say to that person?
Well, if it's not for them and they are
just
happy,
don't believe.
Are they happy? Or if you're miserable and you're saying it's not for you and you don't believe, then why? I mean, what is for you? Why do you get up in the morning? Why do you do anything? Do you have a purpose? That's what I would say, because I feel like I would not have a reason to get up every day, and I wouldn't have a purpose in life if it weren't for God. So I can't even imagine how empty that must feel. So I would want people to know that you don't have to be empty.
And if I'm trying to connect to this spiritual side of my being, is the steps to just start having a conversation, to just start talking to God, is what you're saying. That's the path.
Yes, and if you can reach out to other believers, if you can go to church or talk to other believers, it helps tremendously as well. But that is the first step, just talking to God.
Because it is all about community,
yes, right? Because it's hard to do it alone. You need to have other people. When you do fall down, when you do have your moments where you break down, and you will, everyone does, you have to have people who are there to walk beside you and help lift you back up. And you help them as well.
I tell you what, everybody I think needs to listen to this podcast whenever they're having a bad day. If they're having their woe is me moment, like check into this podcast and just listen to your philosophy. Really, it is a philosophy of how to look at life, from even the simple things that every day you're hitting the reset button. Like, no matter what happens today, tomorrow is a reset.
Right, exactly. Don't dwell on the mistakes you made yesterday. We all fall short, way short of who we're supposed to be. Don't dwell on what you did yesterday, or an hour ago even.
Right.
It's never too late to fix it.
So powerful. Well, Tami, we are almost out of time, but I really appreciate you joining me, and I can't wait to share this podcast with the world. You are an exceptional Fairhoper, and thank you so much for your time. Anything else you want to say as we close here?
I don't think so, but thank you so much, Jason, for having me. And I hope that this will inspire someone, even if it's just one person.
Oh, I think it will. And if you're listening to this, it's right around the new year, so we know people, it's time to get in shape. TamiLindseyFitness.com. Thanks, Tami.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for listening to the Impact Agent Podcast. If you liked the show and got something out of it, please like the Impact Agent Podcast on Facebook and rate and review the show on iTunes or anywhere you listen to podcasts. This really helps us grow the show and helps other agents find it. Please share it with your friends and coworkers as well. You want us to deliver the show to you via email every week? Then email me at jason@impactagentuniversity.com and we'll send you the show every week. Please let us know what you think about the show, what you like, what you don't, or possibly make a suggestion about a topic you want to hear. Email me at jason@impactagentuniversity.com or leave us a message on Facebook at Impact Agent Podcast. Until next week, everybody be productive, safe, and happy, and always keep learning. This podcast is produced by Johnny Gwynn at Deep Fried Studios in Mobile, Alabama, and is paid for and powered by ImpactAgentUniversity.com.